Welcome to Basic Black. Some of you are joining us on our broadcast, and others of you are joining us on our digital platforms. I'm Callie Crossley, host of Under the Radar 89.7. Tonight, a one-on-one conversation with Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Joy Campbell. She is the first Black woman to hold the position of Attorney General in the Commonwealth and the first Black woman to be elected statewide. The Roxbury native was elected to the position after a run for Boston mayor and after serving on the Boston City Council as the first Black woman to be City Council president. Now, as the 45th Attorney General of Massachusetts, the people's lawyer, Campbell will tackle issues that have a direct impact on communities of color, from the racial wealth gap to incarceration. How will she balance the power of the AG's office as well as the weight of expectation from often marginalized communities of color? Attorney General Campbell, welcome to Basic Black.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I want to put into context how historic your win is. There are attorneys general for all 50 states. Of those 50 states, about 16 of them, according to the National Association, are persons of color. All of them are men, with the exception of two, both Black women, you and Letitia James of New York.
That's right.
How do you respond to that?
It's amazing, and I was just actually on the phone with AG James. You know, we're talking about ways in which to partner in the work, and she's an inspiration to me. But it is remarkable, and so I take the responsibility very serious. I understand the magnitude of the responsibility, but also the expectation. And it's not just in Massachusetts, it's nationally. And so when we say representation matters, when I go into certain rooms, sometimes I will be the only Black attorney general in the room, or obviously one of two Black women. And so I see this as a moment that cannot be wasted, and an opportunity to do some really serious work, particularly for those in communities of color and those who have felt left out, left behind for far too long.
So the responsibilities and what you are able to do from your office is wide, and it differs from state to state. So just give us a few high points of what's underneath your umbrella as AG of Massachusetts.
It is tremendous, and I actually tell folks the possibilities are endless. In the traditional way in which you think about the Attorney General, it is the Chief Law Enforcement Office, and I am the Chief Law Enforcement Officer for the state. So that means protect us, do everything to keep us safe. So taking on guns, for example, taking on the Supreme Court that wants to roll back our civil rights, our reproductive rights, making sure that we are addressing everything having to do with our children. So you're in schools talking about bullying and keeping folks safe and our young people safe in that context, taking on discrimination. And so that law enforcement piece, critical. The other pieces, though, is consumer protection. We were just talking about elders being scammed. That is a major issue right now. It's some of the highest number of calls we get into the office. Everything having to do with housing. We can take on discrimination in that context, keep tenants in their homes, deal with foreclosures. So consumer protection, really significant. The environment is another way in which, of course, we are protecting our residents. And so the list is long, and the office does so much. And so my job right now is connecting with folks internally to figure out what are our priorities and how do we message it in such a way that everyone sees themselves as a part of our agenda.
Now, earlier this week, you spoke to some of my colleagues on Boston Public Radio, and you outlined that your internal organization includes several specialized units. So we have reproductive, we have gun enforcement, we have housing that you're doing a particular focus on. In fact, you're hiring someone to be very focused on housing. And along with that, connecting to the racial wealth gap. So this is a different kind of organization than we've seen before. Why
That's
specialized
right.
units? What is that going to allow you to do that you think you'll be able to be a little bit more intentional about addressing these issues?
For me, it's making sure that all the things I promised on the campaign trail that we actually do. I think if we want to rebuild trust in certain communities, including folks in the western part of the state or folks who live outside of 495, if we want to make sure that they are a part of our governing, we have to keep our promises. And so what I heard loud and clear is that folks want us to focus on the well-being of our children and our kids. And so we have right now in the office a Children's Justice Unit, but it is staffed by one attorney. And so how do we expand the reach of that particular unit to take on social media companies or folks who will harm our kids, mental health issues? So there are ways in which to expand what already exists. I also heard loud and clear economics. Inflation, price gouging, housing, of course, is a way to build wealth. And so I have put out, or we will be putting out, a job description on someone who is an economic advisor and serving in the executive bureau and on my executive team to look at all the ways we can use the tools of the office to put money back into the pockets of our workers. We do that now, addressing wage theft. But what are the other ways? We can take on discrimination when it comes to housing, access to loans, appraisal values, particularly affecting Black residents in the Commonwealth or communities of color. We can do a lot more in that vein that I think is different from what folks are doing nationally and innovative. And then what I also heard is keep us safe. So take on guns, but take on community violence. Gun enforcement is one way to keep us safe. Gun trafficking is a major issue that we need to take on. At the same time, how do we invest in organizations that are breaking cycles of violence? You know, the 13-year-old that was shot in my neighborhood of Mattapan, the shooting in Holyoke, or in other municipalities, major concern right now. There is, I think, a greater way for this office to show up, and so I want to establish a unit that addresses that. And then the Reproductive Justice Unit, the Elder Justice Unit, are ways in which to take on critical issues affecting our elders, and of course everything having to do with the access to abortion, which is really critical in this moment in time.
So a couple things have come up very recently. One, along the consumer advocacy line, the AG's office filed a civil suit against a person who veterans say has possibly been scamming them, allegedly been scamming them out of, dubious solicitations is really the key. What's happening there?
So there are several cases. There's some ongoing investigations, so I have to be careful the details that I'm able to share, which is new. You know, when I was on the council, I could talk about anything and everything. Now in this role, it's a balance of making sure we're following process and due process and protecting certain rights. But I'm
speaking about the Sean Murphy one, just to be clear.
That's right. Okay, and so that's an ongoing matter, and so I have to be careful of the details I can share. But what I will say, this Elder Justice Unit that I mentioned, not only will it be a way to be intersectional in how we respond to scams that affect our elders, which is the number one calls that we get that rise to the top are scams, particularly in the context of elders or veterans or immigrants or folks of color, marginalized populations, vulnerable populations. And so we are thinking about how do we be intersectional in that. So yes, the Crim Bureau will absolutely prosecute those folks who prey on these residents. But how do we be proactive in getting out there and letting folks know what their rights are, making sure they know about how scams show up? And so I think there's a way to be more proactive, and that's really about expanding the reach of the office to reach more people, to be more accessible. So whether it's opening more physical locations or investing in community-based organizations that have those relationships, there's a whole host of ways the AG's office can show up, more than just, of course, our hotline, which is significant, more than prosecuting, but really that proactive piece and getting ahead of it so people aren't harmed.
So part of your proactivity around prison reform, police accountability, gun enforcement has to do with making sure people know their rights. That's part of your specialized unit in doing that. And also tackling a lot of various issues under, again, that umbrella.
Right.
So I noticed that Governor Maura Healey has just come out and taken about police inspections for gun dealers. And I wonder if your office is involved in that or will be involved in that, and is that part of the proactivity?
I was just talking to the team this morning about that, and it's EOPS in partnership with a few organizations. We will think about ways in which to collaborate with the governor, if this is one area. I actually have and will be pushing the office to establish a gun enforcement unit, not only to take on inspections and to make sure people are adhering to our gun laws, which are some of the most progressive in the country, but to have a place where you can go to ask these questions. Police chiefs and those who are tasked with, and local officials tasked with enforcing our laws, they don't know all of them, right? Particularly in the context of the Supreme Court and the Bruin case, changing the ways in which we can enforce some of these laws. So this unit will be tasked with convening folks to share best practices, have a couple of folks assigned in the office whose exclusive responsibility is to deal with gun enforcement laws. This same unit will be taking on community violence and thinking innovatively about ways to interrupt those cycles, working with external stakeholders. This same unit will be filing briefs to protect our laws. Right now in court, I've already had to file briefs to take on folks who are challenging our common sense gun laws, looking to get rid of our assault weapons ban. And then the same unit should be showing up nationally. We have some of the most progressive laws in the country. So, of course, how do we work with our governor and everyone here, but how do we exercise that leadership on the national stage? And I will say, I'm not afraid to take on the tough issues. I know we'll talk about criminal legal reform, but I think this is our opportunity to be bold and courageous. As we see more shootings, more gun violence in this country, residents are expecting AGs to step up. And I'm going to do just that, representing the Commonwealth and our constituents.
With this specific thing, with the inspection of the gun dealers, is that? Do you see a bold movement from your office?
Absolutely, and it connects to everything related to enforcement. This came up because journalists said, wait a minute, we have the laws on the books, but no one's enforcing these laws. And I don't want to suggest there's some ill intention, right, by local officials. Some don't have the resources, the training, the knowledge to be able to do it effectively. So I think the governor and EOPS are doing a great thing, and we'll work in partnership with them. But there are other laws on the books that we have to be just as bold in enforcing if we're going to keep our folks safe, including going after bad actors in the ghost guns context, who are buying parts, shipping parts into our state, building these ghost guns and selling them to folks who would not legally be able to get a gun license. That's a major issue that the AG's office is absolutely going to take on.
So could you be bold in declaring that cash bail is no longer in Massachusetts, because it is an issue now, as we know.
It's a major issue.
According to a report from the Commonwealth magazine last year, 23,000 people end up having to pay bail. 8,000 of them remain in jail because they can't afford to pay. And we can ascertain who those folks are in terms of demographic information, lots of low income, lots of persons of color. Many states have moved to either reduce the harm that cash bail incurs, and also some have eliminated it. Illinois, for example, eliminated it as of January. That's right in your wheelhouse.
That's on the list to discuss, and I will say it's an issue I care deeply about and I've paid attention to for years. I talk openly about loved ones being incarcerated and my twin brother dying while in the custody of the Department of Correction. Part of the issue was a high cash bail that I, as next of kin, could not afford to pay. Even though he had severe health concerns and healthcare issues, very difficult to get him out into a setting where he was provided adequate healthcare. And as a result of not receiving adequate healthcare, would pass away while in that system. And so what I am doing now and tasked my office to take on immediately is we're setting up internally a working group on government accountability. That includes whether it's criminal legal reform, prison reform, police accountability, misappropriation of funds, and everyone from different parts of the office sitting down and talking about what can we do to address criminal legal reform. Conditions of confinement are on the agenda to discuss. This will be on the agenda to discuss. Wrongful convictions, everything having to do with reentry and rehabilitation. The Department of Correction pushing for that agency, of course, to be transparent and accountable. All of this is on the list. And we will work with external stakeholders too. And once we develop that agenda, we will be transparent about what it is and be really bold in going after critical solutions. Some within that office, of course, within my office, that we can exercise and work on quickly. Others in the context, of course, of the legislature, where we will push them and the governor to do certain things. And lastly, we'll say one of my first visits was to MCI Norfolk, meeting with the men there who had specific things that we could be working on, including wrongful convictions, which is a major issue. So everything is on the table and it will be prioritized. Another set of issues I think Massachusetts should be leading on nationally too.
Okay. Now, you told my colleagues earlier this week that it's really important that folks understand that when we talk about issues of criminal justice reform, that it's not something that just impacts folks of color. Say more.
That's right. As we criminalize, some will say poverty, substance use disorder, mental health, and I have crisscrossed this state and been in pockets of the state where I will name it, poor white people live in rural communities. They care about these issues too. They're in and out of prison or house of correction settings because of substance use disorder or something else, or mental health concerns. So how do we message these issues so that more folks are champions in advocating with us to change the policies that exist, and that we do it in a thoughtful way? And I'm tired, frankly, of folks framing it as it's just a set of issues that people of color care about. That's just wrong. Immigrants also care about this, as we have this cradle to deportation pipeline we have to address. Youth care about this too, as they are dealing with school-based offenses, for example, that send them into some type of juvenile setting. I also view it as public corruption, government accountability. The disparities that exist in our correctional systems are not by accident, so government clearly has a role to play in curing some of these issues. So how do we frame it under that umbrella as a way to say to folks, all of you should be paying attention to this, and if you care about your tax dollars as well, you should care about these issues too, because the money we're spending to incarcerate folks, we probably should spend it on jobs, we probably should spend it on childcare, workforce development training, all the things we know keep people out of prison, and on building wealth. So that's my framing, and I think it's critically important. People of color shouldn't have to bear the responsibility of addressing the very disparities that they're living with every day.
So we've established in this conversation that housing is a big issue, and there's a housing crisis that everybody in the circle of leadership, local and national, is addressing in Massachusetts. Mayor Wu just announced that she's going to put money into turning old houses into affordable housing, particularly for elderly people. So I'm interested in a law that was passed, zoning law, that requires multifamily housing to be established around the areas that the MBTA services. So that's the law. And all of the communities that are so identified were to turn in their plans about how they would establish multifamily housing around in their communities. Some did not like this. Some, and one in particular, Middleborough, has said, we're just not going to do it. So now that's right in your lap, because who makes them do it? How is this law enforced? And again, we're talking about multifamily housing, which is a big issue in a state where there's a lot of single-family houses, but we have a greater need.
That's right. This is housing is a critical issue, and I think most folks actually don't see the Attorney General's office as playing a role in housing, because they have this view, my job is just top cop, chief law enforcement officer. It's more than that. It's a policy shop. And so for me, we are currently defining what is going to be our lane when it comes to housing. The governor and the lieutenant governor have theirs, the legislature too, and making sure, of course, they're passing zoning laws or other things that will allow us to build more affordable housing quicker. There, of course, have to deal with production and what does it mean to build more housing in different parts of the state, et cetera. So that's been more defined. For us, it absolutely is all the laws dealing with housing. So implementing fair housing laws, making sure people are not discriminated against, which is still happening right now. Cases before me are elders being pushed out of their homes, other tenants being pushed out of their homes by landlords. Foreclosure crisis, clearly we can play a role there. Folks trying to buy a home and can't get a loan from a bank or financial institution because of their race or some other demographic. And then the MBTA zoning law. We are actually actively now working on an advisory, which I hope to have out soon, which will make it clear not only what the responsibility of a municipality is to adhere to that, but also if you do not adhere to this, how might this violate fair housing laws? And taking it a step further to say this is not just about making sure you're following the bare bones of the law. What's the spirit of the law? And And how do we tie that into civil rights and the civil rights work within the Civil Rights Division that is tasked with right now looking at this advisory and how we can craft it. And so more to come on that. And
But you could sue them.
We could do a whole bunch of things. That's exactly right. I think the advisory to start is a good thing because the AG's office has not issued anything just yet. And when that happens, usually you get people to act swiftly. Oh, wait a minute, this is what this all means. Yes, and this is what the penalties could be if you do not comply. And then if folks do not comply, use every tool in your toolbox to make them do so, right? The wish of the people is not just to pass laws, it's to implement them and to enforce them with a sense of urgency, the same urgency that was used to pass this critical law, which would create more housing for folks. Where right now in this state, the median household to be able to buy a home is over $500,000. And so clearly every single municipality is going to have to play a role in addressing this crisis so more families stay here and don't leave Massachusetts.
Okay, we are
But
waiting.
one thing I want to add, why I also view housing as being significant, not only enforcing our laws, it is a way to close the racial wealth gap. It is a way to build wealth. So this economic opportunity priority of the office is just that. How do we build wealth for folks that are just living paycheck to paycheck? Of course, that's communities of color, but that's poor people generally in this state who want ideas and thoughts on ways in which to grow their wealth. And AG can play a critical role in that through enforcement, but also prioritizing issues of housing and taking on bad actors who keep our residents from reaching that dream that they have for themselves and, of course, their children.
Okay, I got a couple of things I want to squeeze in before this is over. One, you have already set up your reproductive justice unit, announced the hotline that's available for folks to get information, and made clear that Massachusetts is going to end up being a place where lots of folks come to resolve some of those issues. So I'm thinking ahead now, as many people are watching with dread, waiting for the Supreme Court case to be solved on affirmative action. Are there proactive stances that you're taking to shore up affirmative action in place in Massachusetts?
So on the reproductive justice piece, we will absolutely be bold and courageous on that. And we're watching, frankly, what's happening in Texas right now as they try to pull certain medications off the market that will limit folks' access to reproductive health care. In the context of affirmative action, right now, of course, it is on our radar. I actually think we have some things in place here in Massachusetts that will allow us to continue to make sure folks have access to opportunity. And there are ongoing conversations, of course, with other AGs nationally on ways in which to get ahead of this. I think we have strong civil rights protections here in Massachusetts, most aren't even aware of. And so I think it's an opportunity for us, again, to lead and to think about what are the laws on our books that will allow us protections even as the Supreme Court goes backwards. The same was true in the context of reproductive health care. We had laws on the books that protected us, even as the Supreme Court went backwards. And of course, you want to wait for these decisions because is it an outright ban? Is it limiting what you can do? The gun case is a great example. It's limiting what you can do. Our laws are very different than New York. But I make it clear, we will push for our folks to have opportunity, especially people of color. As the administration goes backwards, we're going to always go forward in Massachusetts.
So I started the conversation by asking, can you manage both wielding the power of the AG's office and also the expectation of marginalized communities? So how do you do that? How do you deal with the weight of that expectation?
It is a weight, and I have quickly had to reframe it. I'm very faith-driven. I speak about that openly, and prayer is in my faith is my foundation along with my family. And so I reframe it as not a weight, but an opportunity and a blessing to be able to do this work in this moment in time. I started the job with the context of Tyree Nichols. And as painful as it was to watch that video, and I normally don't watch videos, I had to here, given the role and job I have, I said, okay, well, now you are here in this moment in time to do great things, so what are you going to do? And I'm going to be bold and courageous, of course, do it with a sense of urgency, compassion, and empathy. Always center my story, as painful as it is, as inspiration, and the stories of so many others that I meet who also have tragic stories and use that as fuel to do incredible work. Channel that energy into the work. And let me tell you, I'm excited about the possibilities because it will be bold, it will be courageous, it will not only meet the expectation, I want to exceed it. I want folks to say, she said she was going to do something on criminal legal reform. She did something on criminal legal reform. She said she was going to do something to help our kids in mental health or take on social media companies. She did something in that context. She said she was going to help us build wealth and make sure we had access to opportunity and take on discriminations. She, along with her team, did that. And we have all the resources and incredible talent in this office to do bold things. And as if we do that, if anything, it feels joyful. I'm bringing, I guess, my middle name into the work. It feels joyful to do it, not a weight, but an incredible blessing.
Why is this the best job you say you have? The best
It is the best job. I've been telling the governor, and if I saw the vice president and the president tomorrow, I'd tell them the same. You know, sorry, you have your job. I have the best job in the country. Because in the issues we're talking about in this moment in time, no one is better positioned than an attorney general to take them on quickly with short-term solutions and long-term solutions, enforce our laws, work to pass them, and do so much more. So I have the best job.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
That's the end of our broadcast, the end of our show. Thank you for joining us. Now stay with us as we continue our conversation on our digital platforms, YouTube and Facebook. I'm Callie Crossley, host of Under the Radar 89.7. We're on YouTube and Facebook with our post show, continuing our discussion with Attorney General Andrea Joy Campbell. So, following up on you're talking about it being the best job, but all the heavy things that you have to take on to do it. There's going to be, obviously, you and Governor Maura Healey have a very close relationship. She put it all out there and made it clear that you were the one she wanted to be working with her in tandem. But now you have your own independent silo governmental organization within the Massachusetts framework, constitutional framework. So how do you maintain the partnerships, of course, but also do the job that you have to do with regard to her role? And so, for example, I'm thinking there will be questions about, let's say, contracts, diversity contracts, and that's your job to monitor if those contracts are holding up to maintaining the diversity that is required. How will you do that?
So on the one hand, yes, work with the governor to put forth partnerships and that will help folks with housing and other issues. But I also know in my role as AG, I'm accountable to the people, not the legislature, not the governor. I don't answer to them, I answer to the people. And on the contracts issue, the people have said for some time now, the state is not meeting its obligations when it comes to diversity numbers or the number of women, particularly in the context of the T. And so our office already is looking at, well, T, what are you doing there? And if folks don't understand the false claims division, there is one in the office that is looking to explore some of that. And if we're using a civil rights lens in the work, which is what we want to do, this is an opportunity to take that on in other issues. But you would hope that you can work in collaboration with the new governor to say, this is the problem. I think you understand the same. How do we work together to change that swiftly and quickly so that we don't have to take extreme enforcement measures against a state agency? Okay. But I know who I'm accountable to, and it's reminding folks it's to the people.
So again, because there will be comparisons, now Governor Healey made a huge splash nationally as an AG on a lot of political issues and some of the lawsuits. Are you able to, given that you are black, and that's a whole different lens that's being, and gaze applied to you, become the kind of political national leader that she did? Do you want to?
I think it's critical. What I did hear, and it was constructive feedback from people, is yes, take on the national issues, but don't forget us here. Don't forget we're dealing with poverty, we're dealing with violence in our municipalities, particularly our cities. Don't forget that in the western part of the state, or the northern part of the state, children are being born into poverty, or youth are dealing with major mental health issues. Take on these issues here, or that we have companies that are polluting our communities. So yes, ExxonMobil, take on that case, but don't forget us here. So that local focus is going to have to be critical. And what I've told folks is we can focus on all the issues here, and we have significant work to do, but it would be a missed opportunity if we weren't showing up nationally. Massachusetts is the leader in historic, by every measure, the Constitution, when our first public school was founded. People look to us in our laws to establish practices, regulations, and laws in other parts of the country to do what we're doing, have maybe for generations. So we have an obligation to lead nationally, but you can do both. And when it comes to criminal legal reform, taking on economic opportunity and using the tools of the office to do that, police accountability and a unit I want to establish in the office, these are areas where we will lead, and we should be talking about how we're doing that nationally while balancing local concerns. We can do both.
Now, you talked earlier about, perhaps partnering with other AGs, particularly AGs of color, around certain kinds of issues. And I look at Massachusetts as, in many ways, increasingly becoming kind of a unicorn. So lots of folks will look at it or come here for relief of many other pressures. How do you, in the job that is to protect us here in the state, but as you've said, make sure we're looking outwardly, nationally, sort of keep our boundaries tight without buckling under the pressure of all the other outside external folks, coming in?
I think it's number one, focus on the people here. I could care less about my political profile nationally, and I will be called into certain conversations, particularly around reproductive justice, and there are opportunities to work with other AGs, including AG James, on these issues, or things related to police brutality. Was on a program with other AGs of color talking about ways in which AGs can do more in this space. And so there's a lot of spaces to show up, but the priority is here. And so for me, it's if I'm showing up nationally in these conversations, how does it align with the work we're doing here? How are we taking on abuse of power concerns in our police departments here in Massachusetts? And there are such cases that we have to deal with. How are we making sure people here have access to reproductive health care services? How are we tying that into issues related to maternal health in communities of color? Focus here. Set some benchmarks around what we're going to get done and deliver for our residents. And then, of course, if there are opportunities to highlight that work nationally, go for it. But people will come to us because we are leading the way on so many different things, particularly in the context of healthcare, higher ed. All types of innovation is happening here, biotech, you name it, where folks naturally want to come to Massachusetts and say, what are you doing? Or we have the jurisdiction and authority. AG James has civil authority, but no criminal authority. We have both here in this office. And so there's opportunities to partner, and there's opportunities to lead on certain things where naturally folks nationally will want us to show up and be a part of those conversations. But you have to do it while prioritizing our residents here. And I've heard that loud and clear.
All right, now I'm pivoting personally. When you first ran for city council, I'll just tell a personal story. I was minding my business at a party.
That's right, in Dorchester. I was wondering if you were going to bring that up.
Yes,
That's
at a party in Dorchester on a Sunday, just chilling
out. And it was
out.
a beautiful party, by the way.
It was great.
In a beautiful backyard.
My friends Kevin and Mike.
That's right.
And I look up and I see people with T-shirts saying, with your name for city council. I said, wow, that's great. They're out door knocking. Then I realized, oh my God, she's out here on Sunday door knocking.
That's right. Talking to people, shaking hands. That's right.
I know. So you've always been driven. I mean, you were one of the highest door knockers when you first ran for office against a veteran, if folks don't remember that.
That's right.
City council member, Charles Yancey, who was also black. So it was a huge deal that you won that first contest. What drove you to want to do this? And tell folks about a little bit about you for people who don't know your personal history.
I give much of the credit to leaping into this political space to my twin brother, because after he passed when he was only 29, while in the custody of the Department of Correction as a pretrial detainee, and as a result of receiving inadequate health care, I asked the question, right, how do two twins born and raised in Boston and Roxbury in the South End have such different life outcomes? I go off to become the first in my family to go to college, to Princeton, to UCLA for law school. And by every metric, I'm a success story. And so when leaving work for Governor Patrick, where I served as an attorney, was praying on what was next, and felt like running for city council was something I heard. And part of that was people saying, have you ever thought about running for office? And I would say no, and to some, hell no. But thought policy and government, in particular in politics, plays a critical role. And it saddens me that people are so disconnected from the political system. And not just voting, but just civically engaged. Are you showing up to council meetings or local governments or civic associations? Do you know who your attorney general is, your governor is? And are you advocating for the things you need? And if you're not, you will not be considered as we are making decisions in these spaces. And so I recognized I want to change that. Part of the reason is because of what happened to my twin brother. And so I care deeply around prison reform, criminal legal reform, but making sure folks that are left out, the invisible, the marginalized, are part of those conversations. So even if people don't vote, even if they don't show up, I'm still at this table, particularly in the AG office, saying, well, what about the folks who live outside of 495? What about folks in communities of color? What about folks who are incarcerated? What would they be saying about this policy discussion? Why are they not at the table? And so I use my story to represent some of those interests, but my goal has always been to center the people in the work. That's what gives me the inspiration and the courage. People say, well, don't do that. It's not politically convenient, or I don't care. That political lens, maybe I just don't do a great job of using it when making my decisions. I use the people. And we have an opportunity to make sure government is responsive to their needs, but also using government to roll back the disparities it created. There's a role it must play in order to make sure our people have an opportunity, and most importantly, the next generation, including my two boys, do better than the last, which we know is still a major concern in this country.
So I'm going to pick up on your two boys and ask the sexist question that all women leaders get asked. How do you do it all? Tell us about your family, and you just mentioned your two boys.
My two boys, who are 3 and 5, Alexander's 5, Aiden is 3. My husband, who was a partner in this work, and not just a partner in the surface level sense. He does drop off, and I'm trying to be home at certain days of the week for when Alexander gets home. My aunt and uncle, who are my parents, who live directly across the street. Our house would fall apart without mom, who helps with everything, and sometimes there's a meal when I get home prepared by her, and it's always good. And so there is a village of people that are surrounding me that show up to support me every step of the way and to support my family. And I tell anyone who is a leader, my faith in my family or my foundation, you need a foundation. Because if there's any cracks in it, you cannot be successful in your job. You cannot be successful in helping other people. And so I pay attention to that. I strike a balance. And I keep a tight schedule. Don't waste time, right? I don't have time to waste. And so it's about getting things done. And also being a mother, being a wife, you bring that into the work in a way that I think is really important, particularly as I'm engaging parents who are concerned about the well-being of their kids, concerned about violence, concerned about anything and everything having to do with whether or not their kids will reach their dreams. And so there's a connection there that I get that means a lot to me, and I know means a lot to them.
Okay, last question. What do you do for fun?
I would say I like to travel. I did take my husband away. I was like, leave these kids behind and let's go. And I brought no phone and let's go hide on this island somewhere and lay in the sun. But travel, I also, like to, when I can, read a book, right? And I'm usually into nonfiction. Mom's like, can you lighten up and get into some fiction, right? And so just reading and then spending time with family. Playing with the boys, hanging out with them is always a joy. It's always a joy.
And it's your middle name, too. So,
That's right.
so there you go. Thank you so much.
Standing in that. Thank you so much. Thank
All right,
you.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.